Hey, welcome everybody to the Everyday Investor Podcast. I hope you had a great weekend. I certainly did. I was one of 40,000 people who made it along to the Pixies and Pearl Jam concert this weekend, and I bumped into Red, who is a fan of the show. Hello, Red, how you doing? Now, he was volunteering with the council to help those with mobility issues get into their seats. I think that's really, really cool and really smart as well, if you like live music. But it was an amazing, amazing show. I love both of these bands equally in different, very different ways. It was noticeable, though, how few people else there were like me who were fans of both of these bands. Maybe it's proof that while life and the overlapping Venn diagrams can be hard at times, you get more out of things, especially when there's an opening gig that no one else really is into. But this is all over life, right? Going overseas and getting your first home is another great example of this overlap where you can do something fun and grown up at the same time. To do both is a lot of work, but it can be super rewarding later on if you can pull it off. Today, it's about buying your first home, and it's about buying your next home. My guest today followed or is currently following a really simple strategy that I wish more and more people would take advantage of: the upgrade in a downward market property buying strategy. This is what all the lucky people do differently, and it's a great example of how taking the tougher path sooner can get you ahead. You go large when others shrink back. You buy more when there's blood in the streets. You use common sense when the crowd's not watching. Today, I'm sharing a chat with Matt Schticks. Now, his name is fake, you may have guessed, but his story is very, very real. It's the tale of an everyday first home buyer who once managed to travel overseas for 3 months and save up for a house deposit at the same time. I joined Matt and his wife Janine recently in their latest chapter, where they were planning the strategy on how to make one income, along with their 2 small kids, go as far as it can in a depressed property market. I trust that you're going to enjoy this one, but remember, a good strategy for one person could be terrible for another. Please consider property strategies very carefully and ideally get advice, just like Matt did. Link is in the notes if you want to have a no obligation chat with me to learn about how I can help you. Let's get started. You are listening in to the Everyday Investor Podcast, and I'm Darcy Ungaro. Business, shares, crypto, property, precious metals, and managed funds. It's not about the tools, though. It's about the dream and how much risk you're willing to take along the way. I'm aiming for a healthy margin above an average result for myself, my family, and the people I work with. If you're an everyday person, then please join me. The Everyday Investor Podcast thanks past, present, and future partners of the show. Special mention to Ungaro & Co. for financial advice, Gorilla Technologies for strategic IT solutions, and Icehouse Ventures for investment into Kiwi tech startups. Check out the show notes, subscribe to the fortnightly newsletter, say hello on the socials, and leave a 5-star review. But most importantly, remember, this isn't advice. If you need that, reach out to me or contact your current financial advisor for input. Thanks for joining me on this one. Let's make a start. I don't want anyone to know who you are, but your story is really typical. So I thought I'd catch up with you and just pull on the threads that make you unique, and in particular, just around your journey with money, how you got into the position that you're in right now, where you're thinking about making another move with property. So let's start with just who you are and what you do to start with.
Yeah. I'm an industrial tradesman. I work at a facility that makes cardboard boxes, actually. Everyone needs cardboard boxes. I'm married to Janine, and I got a couple of juniors at home. One that's 2 and another one that's 3 months old. My wife's home with the kids.
Thank you, Janine, for allowing Matt to come and have a quick chat with me.
Yeah.
Let's go back down to the start when you were growing up with money. What was your earliest recollection of money and what it all meant?
I mean, as a real little kid, it's money buys stuff, and you can do stuff with that. We were given pocket money growing up. Mum and Dad although they didn't teach us specifically these principles, but they showed there's money for living on, money for giving away, and money for growing, and that encompasses saving and investing. It was positive. Came from a middle class family, and money wasn't stretched, but money was carefully watched and wasn't frivolously.
And so growing up, you probably had a pretty good sort of grounding in financial concepts, or at least as much as a kid could have, right?
Yeah.
But when you got older and you started making decisions for yourself with money, would you say that you were pretty onto it, or a bit slack, or where would you sit on that spectrum?
So initially out of school, and actually before that, when I had a part-time job at high school, I was pretty slack with money. It was kind of yeah, there for that growing aspect, there wasn't much for that. It would kind of be maybe grow for a car, or grow for a new phone, or things like that, and deplete it fully.
Yeah, it was still about spending, but I guess financial management was probably more about storing it up so you could spend it on bigger ticket items,
Yeah.
right? So when you were doing your first job, so presumably you did a trade.
Yep.
Did an apprenticeship.
Yeah.
Got your first job. When you were starting to earn some money for yourself, how did you behave with that money? Did you kind of start to change your attitude towards money as you started earning decent amounts of it?
I mean, coming out of my apprenticeship, I was earning, I think it wasn't anything massive. It was around like $30 an hour kind of thing. So you start to think about, oh, maybe I can actually make this work for me. You see your KiwiSaver start growing and things like that. Yeah, and amongst that, I had friends who, probably who encouraged, positive moves towards maybe being a bit better with money.
So in terms of like how they would encourage you, in what way were you just, they were kind of modeling how to behave really good with money?
Yeah, there was modeling on how to behave, and then there was also just kind of getting stuck into me when I bought the new phone, or things like that.
Gotcha.
And I suppose also to answer that, looking back, the home ownership, it had always been there, kind of ingrained in me. Like, this is a good way to set up for life and for retirement from mum and dad.
Okay, so mom and dad kind of instilled that
Yeah,
idea.
yeah. So
Home ownership is good. You should do it, man. Come on. And so later on, when you were kind of not indirectly chastised by your peers, let's say,
yeah,
or brought into line because you saw them doing some good things with money, that's probably when the light bulb started going off.
100%.
Yeah. Okay. And so what's your earliest recollection then of when you made that decision that, yes, I'm going to get ready to buy a home? What was that like?
Yeah, I finished my apprenticeship. I started earning good money. Where I was actually working was a facility that was going to be shutting down in a few months, and so I was like, right, this is a good time to kind of work real hard. Smash some real good overtime and build that pot of money for a fixed amount of time. With the knowledge that I'm going to use that for buying a home in the future.
Really just trying your best to be quite frugal. So as soon as you had that goal, you were kind of fixated on it, weren't you?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was, I suppose, make the sacrifice to continue living at home also. And so just playing board rather than going flatting, I get on well with mum and dad, but, it definitely, tempted you to go flatting, go have a good time with your mates and things like that. So, making that, I suppose it is a sacrifice at some point.
I guess that's a good thing about living with parents for longer than maybe you want, is that you do have this really hardcore drive to get out of home, right?
Yeah.
They want you out, you want out.
That's right. Yeah.
And you want to buy a home, right?
Yeah.
And so, but because it's such a long process, or it is for a lot of people, right? Like from when they decide to buy a home, their first home, to when they actually buy their first home, could be a really long time, right? And it's easy to kind of get ahead of yourself and get fixated on an idea before you're anywhere near being prepared.
Yeah.
Being prepared, like getting your deposit together, making sure your income is solid and all that sort of thing. So when you decided to, and when you actually did, what was the general gap in terms of planning and preparation?
Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty big timeline. I mean, saving up for a house deposit is quite a timeline. So yeah, as I said, I smashed a lot of overtime for a few months. Actually, then after the facility shut down, I went and worked overseas. On a humanitarian ship, kind of as an overseas experience, and I felt pretty challenged to do that. And I mean, that was as well as like a hugely rewarding kind of thing, and good for growth. It was a very cheap OE. So I went overseas and did that for a few months. Yeah, came back, got the job at the facility that I work at now. Started working there again. I was back living at home with mum and dad.
Yeah.
Started house shopping initially, not making offers but looking around. And then had a chat to a broker. He kind of probably brought reality down and was like, "Yeah, you're not quite ready."
And for the record, it wasn't. So
yeah.
Say that. Okay. So you.
But you probably would have said that, eh?
Well, let's see. But that's the thing, right? Like when you know what you want,
Yes.
never enough to just want something, you actually have to have a strategy to get it, right?
Yeah.
And so, but most people don't really kind of have the strategy perfectly figured out, and
Yeah.
then they go ahead and do it. Like
Yeah.
usually it's you build as you go, you figure it out as you go. And was that the case with you? Were you kind of just figuring out what your options were as you were simultaneously saving and preparing?
I mean, putting that money to work while I saved it, it wasn't really like it was, put it in a savings account.
Yeah.
And then, run the KiwiSaver as hard as you can kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, there wasn't a huge amount of thought with it rather than trying to build this pot,
Yeah.
I suppose.
Okay.
And so there was definitely benefit of having a mortgage broker, particularly for the first time.
Yeah. Totally.
Where you are pretty clueless and someone that's
Yeah.
kind of not from the bank saying yes you can do this, can't do this, like maybe giving you a few more options and walking through that with you.
I imagine like it must be really similar to doing any really significant project, like doing a massive renovation on your home, let's say.
Yeah.
You probably know how to use the tools, you probably know what you want, but you don't really know the best way to go about it. And it's probably not until you actually speak to a builder, and that builder isn't just pricing a job, they're actually telling you what's involved, because they have the experience. And yeah, you can do these things like buying a home. It's actually not that really hard when you think about it.
No.
But to piece it all together, it's quite a big project. And I guess that's where the mortgage advice piece, a lot of people don't really realize what they really do. Like a lot of people go to them to get a good deal on a mortgage thinking that that's what they do.
Yeah.
But in your experience, how critical was having that mortgage advisor work with you during that process?
Yeah, I mean, I'd nearly go as far for buying your first home. Like, I'd pay a premium to have a mortgage advisor. Obviously, you don't, but to have someone there, quote unquote, like holding your hand and being like, right, you need to, get the lawyer involved and, you tee this up, tee that up, kind of, this is how it's going to work. Like, this is maybe something you could tone from your budget, or maybe something you don't actually have to worry about toning from your budget. Someone there that is impartial. They aren't just another mate with opinions. Their market's going hot or the market's tanking, Yeah,
they're walking you through the process. Yes. So just going back to when you prepared to when you bought, that distance of time overall, roughly how long was it again before you actually bought from when you started preparing for it?
Yeah, maybe 3-4 years probably.
3 or 4 years?
Yeah. Wow.
See, that's really important to point out, right?
Yeah.
Because, hey, like, I know it's hard to get into a first home, and I think the hardest part these days is saving for your deposit.
Yeah. Oh, hands down.
Like that would take a long time for you.
Yeah.
For my wife and I, we were so fortunate to be able to buy in a time when the bank was lending 95% of the purchase price.
Yeah.
So it was amazing because we actually didn't have to try that hard on that side of it.
Yeah.
But sometimes you don't know how good it is, at the time. Like if we would have known, we probably would have pushed it a lot more.
Yeah.
I think everybody says that. So 3 to 4 years before you actually were able to buy a place.
Yeah.
And part of that was probably because you had to prepare, in your case, saving up a deposit, right?
Yeah.
That was probably the biggest piece.
Oh, 100%. I mean, that's, saving the deposit was even harder than servicing a mortgage, in those first few years.
Yeah, wow.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
You're all stressed, I'm getting a mortgage, like, how am I going to service this? And, you're running calculations and like, what if? For me, anyway, getting that deposit, saving up those 6 figures was hands down a lot harder than,
It's insane. Yeah. Because it's the same amount of effort is required to service your mortgage as it is to come up with that deposit sometimes, right?
Yeah,
like,
that's right.
In your case, you were living with mom and dad, so at least presumably they were giving you a discount on board.
No, they were. Yeah.
So that was like that's a massive assist. But at the same time, your ability to manage your cash flow so that you could scrape away and retain as much of your leftover income as possible, that's what gave you not only the deposit or the seed to be able to buy a property, but it also gave you the financial discipline to keep on going with servicing a mortgage.
That's right. Saving a deposit, you're really just looking at a figure increase. You're not living in your first home and you're able to do things to it, and it's just work, isn't it?
It's not actually that
delayed gratification.
It's not emotionally satisfying.
No.
So tell me a little bit then about the first home that you did buy. Did you kind of find that you were really well calibrated? In other words, your understanding of where the prices were for the property that you felt you wanted to move into, were you pretty well calibrated to what was available on the market?
I mean, everyone wants to say, yes, I know exactly what's going on, but no, I mean, I missed out on homes, it was pretty demoralizing probably for a few months. Yeah, like quite a few, close to a year.
Wow.
You'd make offers and you'd miss out on, and then you you're also racking up all this debt, more debt than you've ever had in life, and so you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be stretching myself to the limit. I'm aware. Maybe that isn't the best thing. So you're making offers, you're missing out, and then you go through weeks when you're like, oh man, like what's the point? Like, do I just give up and go flatting or go renting? Or
How many houses would you have missed out on?
it was a handful. Like it wasn't 20, but
But
it's
somewhere
still
between
it's still you get
Yeah.
your emotions get involved, and when you make that offer and then you go back and forth a bit, and
Yeah.
then it's like, nah.
So it took you a while to find. It took you a while to prepare. It took you a while to find something.
Yeah.
You missed out on quite a few properties, but when you did find the one, were you surprised about how much you ended up paying, or did it kind of feel like, yep, this is kind of what I thought at the beginning I would end up paying?
Yeah, I mean, price wise, it was. Yeah, I mean, it was probably within 20K of my max kind of thing.
Okay.
So, funnily enough, I actually went to the open home on the last open home, and it was an on-site auction. And so, turned up and not wanting to bid, and so just wanting to watch. It was probably a nicer home, slightly nicer than I thought I'd end up get. And funnily enough, the auctioneer's car broke down. Yeah,
So
Mercedes and things like that.
So the auctioneer
Yeah,
didn't make it to the auction.
well, he was late.
He was late.
Yeah, he was late, and so the auction fell over, and so I didn't actually stay for the auction. I said to the agent, I said, "Oh, look, I'm pretty keen on this house, but I'm not bidding. I'll be keen to make an offer if it passes in." Yeah, but it passed in. Whether he got there, I'm not sure. And the next day, I had a phone call. They rung up and said, "Oh, are you keen to make an offer?" I said, "Yeah," and so made my offer. It was a multi-offer, and they pulled me in, and they play their game. Oh, can you go any higher? That kind of thing. And I was like, look, I'm not saying I am or I'm not going to go higher, but I'm not bidding myself up.
Yeah. Did you feel confident? Because again, you're on your own, and this is the first time you've done this, and you've missed out for quite a while. So how confident did you feel when the real estate agents were doing their thing on you?
Like, confident enough, but you're still kind of. You're kind of packing it, like you're buying your first house, and you're sitting in this room. And you got these two agents like hounding you, and you're like, oh man, is this going to be another one I miss out on? And so anyway, made the offer, and it got the house. Actually, didn't have to bid up higher. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
So you got the house. And so when was that?
2018.
About 6 years ago. 6.5 years ago now. Because you went really close to what your higher limit was in order to buy this property. It's harder for you to probably answer this question, but would you have gone even higher if the bank were willing to give you more money?
Yeah, probably a bit.
But you did cap out at where the bank stopped you, but also at the same time, you did know at that stage what it would cost to service the mortgage.
Yeah. Oh, yes. No, 100%. Yeah. Sat down with the broker and we'd worked out servicing, and that was all. Yeah, kosher. Yeah, like I alluded to before, it was definitely like, oh, how are you going to service this mortgage?
Yeah.
And there was stress around that, even if the bank was
Yeah.
on board with it. I was still battling that internal battle of whether it was a good decision or not.
Yeah, it is massive, like, because there's a lot of things going on in people's lives at that stage. You're moving out of home. I know it wasn't the first time you moved out of home in your case, but like that's pretty big.
Yeah.
You're making a very significant financial decision and commitment, and then you're moving into a new area that you haven't lived, taking responsibility over something that you didn't have to worry about before. So it is quite massive.
Yeah, and you're also battling with that internal. Although mum and dad, pushed, buy a house, I was still brought up like debt is bad.
Were you?
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Pay down your mortgage as fast as you can, and I mean, there's very good things about that. Personal car loans and things like that. That's bad.
Yeah.
And so when you go to the bank and you're like, oh yeah, how can I rack up the most debt? That's still an internal struggle that to get past.
Yeah, that's right. Debt is good if it's used for good purposes.
That's right.
When you're moving to this home, you took responsibility for all the expenses, of course, and the mortgage payment. What were some of the things that you did to make sure that you could sustain those mortgage payments confidently?
Part of it was I wanted to be slightly more central than probably other homes I'd looked at, or the house is slightly more central, and so I meant that I ended up buying a 2-bedroom house, little 2-bedroom bungalow, and it's got a sleep out the back, and so I was like, right, there we go. So I can live in the sleep out, because the goal all along was to buy a 3-bedroom. Then I can have 2 flatmates to count towards serviceability, as well as
help you
practically help towards serviceability, not just in the loan application. Yeah, so I ended up living in the sleep out,
You
or
fixed it?
sleeping in the sleep out. I lived in the house like they were flatmates.
Yes, but this was external to the house.
Yeah.
There was no toilet in that.
Nah,
You actually had to go outside
yeah,
to go back into your hut.
yeah. No, it's good for
And
the overnight bladder control. Yeah,
that's right.
yeah, that's right. No plumbing out there. A miserable day when it was raining.
Good on you, though. So you did what it took to, I guess, hammer the mortgage, but also service the mortgage as well, right?
Yeah.
Because I would imagine that with your income at the time, if the bank would have approved you, they would have approved you to do that. But that
Yeah.
you also genuinely followed that strategy by staying in the sleep out
Yeah.
and renting out the main
Yeah.
portion of the home as much as you could.
That's right. I mean, to be honest, it was like a balance and a tension between like run those rooms for as much money as you can, and then also like I got on super well with the flatmates. They were mates. But they became mates over the time. But it was also I'm going to get more money for those rooms than the sleep out, and so it was like, well, I can get more money on the mortgage, and so that can help
That's cool.
the balance of life.
Yeah, there's more than one way
Yeah.
to get the job done. Buying a home and income property is probably a more comfortable version of that.
Yeah.
But it's not always possible.
Yeah.
But you did a version of that, which I think is pretty clever because sometimes we kind of think in our minds, the options are very black and white. We can do this or we can't do that. But you found a way to weave a pathway, which made it more doable, which is pretty cool. So was it pretty critical to your current position, the fact that you had already bought a home by the time you got married and started having kids?
Yeah, I mean, it was foundational, really. Yeah, it was pretty nice. When we got married, I'd never slept in the house. So the day after our wedding, like, it was the first night I ever slept in the house. And so, yeah, for my wife, Janine, it was, it was like we were moving into the house together. Yeah, that kind of set us up, at that point we're dinky. And so dual income, no kids, and so you're having all this money on a house that I bought back when I had a single income, and so we were able to punch down a fair bit of capital, get a bit more left over working and some other things. Yeah, and then I mean we had kids relatively quick after that.
So just getting into that situation, then you're on a single income because you're popping out a couple of children.
Yeah,
you have popped out a couple of children. And you're looking ahead. You're looking at these two young kids that you can still hold up at the same time.
Yeah,
both of them, and realizing that won't always be the case. The place was fairly fit for purpose for a very, very small family.
Yeah.
But what was it that was the catalyst to make you think, hey, it's time to actually make another move here?
I mean, possibly one of the main things was seeing our house value drop. To be honest,
Okay.
And it was like, well, if our house is dropping, then the upgraders' houses are dropping. If ours drops 20%, so does theirs. And so, yeah, and having gone through a couple of years of seeing house prices continue to grow, as well as seeing your own kind of book value grow. So maybe this is a time to think about that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, and then chatting again, one of my friends that challenged me back in the day on kind of, Nathan, stop buying the new phones all the time and things like that. He's been at me like, now's the time to rack more debt. Like, rack what you can.
Wow, that's cool. That's a good friend.
Yeah. No, he's a good man. Yeah,
that's cool. So that started to get you thinking. But this time around, it's a little bit different, right? Because when you bought your first home, it was just you.
Yeah,
you were living with parents.
Yeah,
you kind of had autonomy. You could decide.
Yeah,
I'm going to make some sacrifices. I'm going to get this done. Now we have Janine, and you have a couple of little kids. So it's a bit, it's a little bit tricky, right? What are the conversations like between you and Janine in terms of, hey, can we afford this?
Yeah.
Is that a concern similar to what it would when you bought the first home? Are you kind of thinking, hey, how can we prepare for this?
The first thing was definitely the concern. So leading into having a single income household, while Janine was pregnant, we kind of like dialed back our spending to live on a single income, and so that was quite an adjustment in life, going from dinky to single income. It is quite jarring, and going back to kind of when you first get your mortgage and you're like, flip, we're buying coffee beans from the warehouse, and it's Chardonnay's 2 shelves down and things like that, and you're kind of reining things in, and so yeah, it is a bit scary to be thinking, oh, flip, like, do we stretch again?
Yeah.
So I suppose the first thing was like, well, can we actually stretch? And so you sit online and you punch into some calculators and you're like, man, like it is going to be tight, tighter. The extra payments we're making on the mortgage, those are going to start getting gobbled up, and getting closer to the minimum that you can pay. And so. Yeah, then it was just an initial actual chat with the bank, not a pre-approval, but just kind of a chat like, what kind of figure are we talking about things?
Yes.
And so, yeah, I mean, then although I've heard, everyone says, yeah, banks are stingy when you have a couple of kids, like, then the reality sets in. You're like, man, they are stingy. like when you have well, it's 3 dependents, and so yeah, that kind of gave me confidence, funnily enough.
Okay.
To be like, right, well, if the banks, I'd happily borrow more than that, so the banks aren't gonna lend,
That's
yeah,
right.
into
They'll keep you
into
safe.
yeah, it
They'll keep
keeps
you
you well
safe.
safe. So so then it was kind of it was a bit demoralizing because it was like, oh man, like we can't borrow that much more. Is it actually worth it? And then I don't know if we were looking on a website or again back to this mate. Someone came up with the idea of home and income. And that got that kind of whirling.
Like another version
Yeah,
you did at the start.
Yeah. That's right. And so it was like, oh, maybe we can get this thing kind of going. Lots of thoughts going on, and so I was like, right, we should probably go talk to someone rather than just bouncing things off friends and bouncing things off each other, and then talking to the bank that can say, no, you can't do this. Yes, you can do this. Like, I mean, yes, they keep the 100%. They're not trying to stitch you up, but it's not necessarily should you do this,
Correct.
or is it a good idea?
It's more like, can you?
Yeah.
Should you?
Yeah.
Couple of interesting themes so far. So you came to a place where you decided, right, well, our place has been hit by 20% reduction in price. So is everything else. I think that's really important to point out, because in a downward market or even a flat market, I think that's some of the best time for the upgraders to come out.
Yeah.
Right? For people that do own something and they want to sell and they want to buy something bigger. Yeah, always upgrade in a downward market, because you're getting a bigger discount than what you give away.
Yeah.
But it's the opposite of what everybody does.
Yeah.
And so that's why immediately, like when we were catching up a couple of weeks back, that's why I thought, yeah, good on you, right? You actually, you figured this out. You've thought this through.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because if you're thinking about a car, a manual transmission,
Yeah.
you're changing gears. As soon as you go into second gear from first gear, immediately the engine slows down again. You can feel it coming under strain. And that's kind of like what it's like, I guess, going back to that old school way of thinking in your budget. I slow down again, and I'm working really hard.
Yeah.
I'm on one income, and I'm trying to lift this whole thing.
Yeah.
But eventually it gets a little bit easier as time goes on, right?
Yeah.
And so what is your thinking then around the strategy? Like, I know we talked about the home and income. So that, for those that don't understand, that just means it's a regular, normal home that you can live in, but a part of it might be segmented off with or without a separate entrance, and you can rent it out as if it's not a brand new, but as if it's a standalone property. You could rent it out, right?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like buying 2 properties in one, and they're really common in certain areas. But is that kind of what you're thinking of doing, though? Is doing a similar move where you live in the smaller portion and then you rent out the bigger portion, or where's your headspace at the
Yeah, I mean, it'll depend on the house. And I mean, I couldn't live in a Harry Potter closet, but you could. I can comfortably, as a single bloke, you can live, something pretty small, and you don't have to be super comfortable if it's your bedroom.
Yeah.
But now, I mean, being married and having juniors, you can't do that to them, and I mean, both of us are making the decision, and so there are more conversations, more conversations that have to happen around kind of, to what degree do we want to be comfortable or not?
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
And so you made the decision now to move forward, right?
Yeah.
And could you just break down a little bit more about the strategy in your mind right now? Because you've got your place in the market, or you're about to get your place in the market right now. So what's your thinking in terms of the ideal home that you guys would like to buy?
Oh, it'll be a 3 or 4 bedroom, and then with like a 2 bedroom in it, kind of thing. And then so there's the option, if the 2 bedroom's nice enough, we could live in that and then rent the 3 bedroom, or probably more likely the other way around. Yeah.
If not now, but eventually, right? Okay. Like you said before, when you go to the bank, they can tell you whether you can or you can't. We caught up and we had some advice going back and forth with us. How did you kind of come across me, and can you just describe, and you don't have to say anything nice about me, by the way, but did you just describe what it was that was helpful about our advice session?
Yeah. So I mean, I did know of you because of the podcast and through talking about you with other mates and things like that. Yeah, I mean, I 100% believe in the thing of paying for advice, and then that it's impartial. and you can pay for the advice and you can leave it at the door if you want, and you don't have to come back for more, and there's no strings attached and things like that. And so again, when we were making all those decisions and we were penciling things down, looking at calculators, and right, we should go talk to a financial advisor, and I'm like dead certain we need to pay for one. Then we're not getting,
That's good.
sold products.
I'm glad I gave you the paid option, not the free option.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'll be asking for a refund after this. So. Just kidding.
There is no free op.
And so we teed up this, and we came for a chat, and it was pretty real. I mean, you spread everything out, and you're like, this is where it's at. What can we make work, and what can't we? Yeah, and you get your reality pulled in, and you get probably encouraged in other areas where you need some encouragement. And then, I mean, like the mortgage broker, from back in the day, it's good to have someone there with you, being like, this is actually a good idea, or maybe that isn't the best idea.
Right. Were you surprised around the areas where it wasn't a good idea versus it was a good idea, or was it kind of like what you expected?
Yeah, I mean, I was probably pushed more than I was naturally wanting to be, which is good.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I was holding back.
Yeah.
I was holding back.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. Of course.
We're all on red. Yeah. Sorry.
No, that's cool. And so just thinking about the whole property move that you're about to make, a lot of people, when they go into property for the first time or when they're upgrading, they might look at property a little bit differently as they get older, because they realize the price of property generally increases over time. So not only is it a nice home to have, it's good for the family, it's also an investment.
Yeah.
How are you looking at this next move? Do you kind of see it as a little bit of a wealth building strategy or move, or is it really primarily just to house a growing family?
Yeah, I mean, this would be where I and Janine probably, I mean, we're fairly united on our money decisions and things, but where you have to talk about things and have to make compromise. Yeah, I'm definitely geared towards this is an investment. We went to look at one home and income a few weeks ago, and it wasn't glamour. And I was like, yes, this is the option. We got a 4-beddy upstairs and a 3-beddy downstairs. Don't worry about the fact you can't drive up to the house. I was like, let's hit this thing. We can get it for a steal. And then Janine would want something more comfortable, but she's also willing and aware of the huge benefit from making the compromise of having someone else live with you. I mean, quote unquote. And so we're united on that. I mean, I need to tone in my expectations.
It's pretty cool though. I guess when you do look at couples that aren't perfectly aligned with, it's good to be in agreement about the things that are important.
Yeah.
Sure. But I think it's actually kind of good to not be super aligned when it comes to financial decisions, because it's like a built-in chicken balance.
Yeah.
Because you might have bought a place that you could only get to from donkeys and Sherpas helping you get up at the front door, right? Whereas maybe if it was her, it would be like the beautiful home, but in a really terrible area.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there as 2 extreme examples, but together you end up buying a home that is comfortable enough, but also strategically well placed, hopefully, so that you can benefit from long-term appreciation of house values, right? And so thinking again about the home being some sort of quasi-investment, hybrid investment thing. On top of that, you guys have to make some decisions around liquidating some investments, put it into this, sell the existing home. That's a big call.
Yeah, it was hard.
Yeah,
that was flipping hard.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So I mean, back when we were dinky, it was pay down more capital. Hindsight, I mean, we should have paid for financial advice back then. 100%. Everyone hearing this, I'm not getting paid to say that. But
only unlocking the doors.
Yeah. Okay. Moving into single income to dual income. There was a lot more money coming in, and so trying to keep the hat on that, and keeping the money for living, keeping the money for giving, keeping the money for building, and trying to, especially that first one, not letting that one run away. Because this isn't going to last forever, and and I still am a bit cagey about everything being on the Auckland residential property market. and pay down principal, and then would stash, a reasonable bit of leftover into ETFs and
So you're investing.
other kind of things like that. So, and there were good learnings in that. I mean, you can't beat the market.
You learn that one.
Yeah. So you learn in that, and and so you build that kind of that pot for the unknown, whether that's for that retirement, or as it's turned out, after our chat, it's kind of used for the next house. And I mean, that was flipping hard, kind of turning that back into to cash, ready to dump back in the Auckland property market.
Yeah. Because you actually did have, we can say this because no one knows who you are, of course, Matt, but you actually had what I thought was a really good portfolio outside of the equity in your home. I thought the areas that you were investing in, relatively high risk, some areas of concentration, but it wasn't property.
Yeah.
And I know that if you were to continue going down that path, apart from the fact that you wouldn't be able to solve the problem at home and that you would outgrow your existing home, I know that financially that would have been quite good because you wouldn't have leverage, but again, you had a lot of risk on those investments, so you probably would have got there.
Yeah.
But I know what you mean. You had to turn your back on that.
Yeah.
Liquidate it, sacrifice that,
Yeah.
and put it into a this is still happening. Put it into a concentrated bet.
Yeah.
Specifically another property.
Yeah.
How do you feel about this decision long term? Do you feel like, no, I have a certain degree of faith here that the property market will actually continue to perform well over the next 20, 30 years? Do you have that faith?
Yeah. I mean, I do have that strong faith. We're all buying into the same pyramid.
That's right.
And as long as we print money, the property will go up. And and those other investments you miss out on your debt. There was no debt used to grow those things. There's good debt, wise debt, blah blah blah. Yeah, we were missing on that, and so now we're concentrating, but you're getting the benefit of the debt.
Yes. It's a pyramid scheme. We'll call it a Ponzi, right? It's a Ponzi without the official mastermind behind it that's pulling the strings. It's just like a Ouija board pyramid scheme sort of thing.
Chuck a conspiracy in there, Darcy. But
I know nothing. But so like that's going on. And if the past persists into the future, you guys are you're going to kill it because you're buying into what I think anyway is probably like the best city and the best country in the world.
Yeah.
And you're leveraging up to borrow other people's money.
Yeah.
For the record, I'm not arranging your mortgage personally, so I can say this with a lot more arm's length.
Yeah.
So you're going to do well, I think, based on that alone. But it is a risky strategy.
Yeah.
Just like it would be if anybody already had their home, but they put all of their investments in one or two bets.
Yeah.
Like, of course, that's risky.
Yeah.
When you're growing up in Auckland, and when you've seen how things evolve over time, I guess you have a certain degree of comfort knowing that, hey, it's probably not going to go backwards, right? So at the very least, you're going to be owning a home that, hey, eventually you'll pay down the mortgage. It'll be a nice, affordable place to live one day in the future. But if everything goes really well, it'll increase in value, and then it'll afford you some options later on in life. Like maybe selling it when the kids move out and downgrading to a smaller home, unlock some equity, live off the difference.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's probably other moves though, right?
Yeah.
Like,
there'll be other moves. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So on that, like if you had the ability because of income and, you were able to afford it, would you buy more property next, like as a rental, or would you rebuild the investments that you've had to liquidate to get into this position?
Yeah. I mean, naturally I'd probably want to rebuild, but I mean, I look at the boomers that are that have racked it up and house and house, and you see ones that have done it good, and you've seen ones that have been crap landlords, and you've seen ones that are really good landlords. And I mean, like everything in life, you see bits that you take and you don't want, but I mean overall you can see how you can use the leveraging kind of model on property to another property. There is compromise in our situation because we've chosen for these early years to be a single income household, and so we can't rack that as fast as we could, and I mean that's compromising for our retirement. But everything has a compromise, and so you just have to choose. Once we're again into this comfortable, there'll be probably another paid chat with someone. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah,
I'll tell you right now for free. Just keep going, man. Just keep going.
Just keep racking out.
Yeah. Okay. Obviously, it's it's really nice. And I think if on behalf of all the boomers that are listening, thank you for being the exit liquidity.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you for one day buying all the housing stock that the old boomers want to offload. Because that's kind of what it is, right? We got to bring more and more participants to this Ponzi scheme for it to be truly successful. But apart from that, I think the world is changing in some pretty key areas where it does kind of make sense to hedge your bets. But you're at this constrained point in your life
100%.
where to do more, you need more income. But to do more income, you need to get rid of some children, which you don't really want to get rid of those children, right?
Yeah.
And so it kind of is all about this holistic version of wealth, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where you're trying to optimize for spending time with your kids.
Yeah.
Also, you want to provide for them the best way, which means you have to leave your kids and go and do a job.
Yeah.
So what then would you say to people who are kind of really fed up with the process of buying their first home?
Push through the right now, and just keep stashing that, building that saving, dump it into the KiwiSaver, or keep trying to save as much as you can.
Why is it so hard to say that though? But when you say, hey, push through, what do you mean by that?
I mean, it's going partway through your question. I mean, it is hard talking about money. I mean, doing this podcast is a bit hard, and so trying to tell other people what to do with their money, or encourage other people what to do with their money is difficult. And when you're also trying to challenge someone to be like, okay, that's hard, but like,
do it anyway.
Suck it up.
Yeah.
It's not really suck it up, but like, push into it, and kind of save what you can, because it does get easier. I mean, like I said before, saving that deposit is by a long shot the hardest part.
Yes.
The serviceability.
Yeah.
In the economic cycle I'm in, from when I first bought, it was easier money wise, relatively quick after you save that deposit.
Yeah. So the first thing is push through. Yes, it is hard. It does get easier, right?
Yeah. That's right.
And so now that you're at the stage where you already have the first home, and now you're looking to get a bigger home, that's equally as scary, if not even more scarier, I think.
Yeah, probably more. I reckon. Like, it's. I mean, there's more facets going on, and you're trying to work out, what works best for the family, what works best for Matt and Janine, and in 10 years, what works best for us, when we're wanting to knock back the work hours, when we're older. And then also, like, just the logistics of selling a house, the in between, if there is an in between, lining them up, cash flow. Then again, we're talking about, are we going to buy a home and income, or are we just going to buy a home? So there's multiple options, and so there's lots more going on. So and trying to not let that money become all consuming and let it become an idol in your life, or through that, and it's a real challenge. Talk to someone, like, get your team on board, your agent and your mortgage advisor and your lawyer, and make a checklist. And as you a lot of good lists. As you tick things off, that burden is released.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
If in doubt, blurt it out. Put it on a big piece of paper. Write it down. You'll feel better about it.
Yeah.
It is bigger, right? Like, it's a big deal when it's your first home, but it's a bigger project when it's your next home.
Yeah. 100%.
A lot more moving parts.
100%. Yeah, the debt's not as scary. You see the big negative figure grow on the bank account, you're like, whatever.
Yeah.
I've seen that before.
Yeah.
But the project, there's a lot more facets to it.
Right. And what about the idea of selling your place? Because we determined when we had our catch up that, in a perfect world, you'd be able to hang on to your existing one, turn it into a rental property, and then buy a bigger home. But in your case, we decided, look, all things considered, we need to sell the existing place. We're in a market where, when you bought it to today, you may or may not get much profit, so to speak, out of it, or not a massive amount.
Yeah.
That's what we're assuming.
It's not hundreds and hundreds, thousands, or millions,
So given that at one stage, just in the not too distant past, it would have been a lot more than it is today. How hard is that? Like, does that act as a bit of an impediment in a sense? Like, does it stop you from wanting to sell it, knowing that it used to be worth a lot more, and now you're kind of locking in a so-called loss? Is that a big deal in your mind?
It is now, right? Yeah, it is. But it's easily overcome by you look at houses that were unfathomable, kind of 2 years ago, and they're a bit more, kind of on the cusp, kind of thing.
That's good.
I hope.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
So-
We've got you at an interesting time where I don't think you had an open home yet, have you?
No.
So
That's right.
it's all highly theoretical.
Yeah, I need to get a sales pitch happening.
Now, there's just one thing before we come in for a landing. There's just a couple of things I wanted to kind of dig into a little bit. Tell me more a little bit about how you managed to travel the world for just over $1,000 a month.
Yeah. As I was saying earlier, so I was working at a facility that was going to be shutting down, and I was hitting big overtime to build that pot again. The goal was kind of like, let's just build this to buy a house. Yeah, it was pretty hard. Like, I remember working Saturday night, and my tradesman at the time, I'd get a text from my mates, and I'd be like, "Yo, Matt, what are you doing? Like, let's go out." And I remember my tradesman being like, "F the boys, like, let's do some more hours." So I mean, it was hard. Yeah, push through some big hours, but because I knew there was an end in sight. Yeah, I remember watching a documentary on an organization called Mercy Ships, and well, no, it was one of the most confronting things I've seen.
So Mercy Ships is a charitable organization that
Yep.
does what?
So Mercy Ships is a global NGO, and so they have. When I was on there, they had one hospital ship. Now they have two, and so they'll go into a predominantly West Coast African country, set up a hospital for 10 months, go to shipyard for a month and a half, and then another country for 10 months. That's staffed by predominantly volunteers. That will work on board and say everything to run a ship, from nurses to max fax and plastic surgeons to the engineering department, which I was part of. And so watched that documentary. I was pretty challenged by what I saw. It was very confronting. Yeah, and looked at the money side of things and how can you make this work? Yeah, and then I was like, it's a pretty good time to like, I don't have to quit a job. You don't have a mortgage. You've got a pile of cash you've built up, and so I was sign up for that, go over there, and
So you had to come up with a little bit of money,
yeah. So
sponsors or whatever, and then people.
someone paid for all my airfares, and then coughed up the monthly myself. And it's cheap, like
That's cool.
like $1,000-$1,500.
Whereabouts did you go?
The ship was docked in Madagascar for 4 months. Yeah, beautiful country. Recommend it for a holiday. And then we went down to South Africa for shipyard, and then up to a country called Benin, which is kind of where the continent kicks out between Nigeria and Togo. And so I was there for 4 months. I was actually only meant to be on there for 3 months, and ended up extending twice.
So that you'd go into port, you'd be doing management, like working on the ship, make sure it's tip-top order, but there would be doctors and crew going out there in the community and bringing people back for medical treatments. Is that kind of how it works?
Yeah. I mean, it's there's an advanced team that goes in the year beforehand, assesses the need of the country,
Right.
kind of. There's different countries that have different needs, what their hospitals can cover themselves, and so the advanced team works out the need, and then they will do a big drive on where we're running these kind of surgeries, and then the ship will dock, and those people get screened, and the high risk or high recovery ones get their operations at the start, and then obviously as it gets less and less risky or recovery time, I should say. I'm not a medical professional. The recovery time shrinks, then you can do that closer to the ship leaving.
Because there's not, like, I don't know about them if there are, but there's not many other things that I've heard about where you can just volunteer on a ship and travel the world. Well, I guess that's maybe what the Navy is. I don't know. You still get paid for that, don't you?
Yeah.
But it's just a really cool story, I think, because you were busy working hard out to save for your deposit.
Yeah.
But you also did an OE.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people choose.
Yeah.
And in my view, they choose poorly.
Yeah.
I think, of course, I'd say that, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's true. I think it's never as easy as it is to buy a home as it is when you can first buy a home.
Yeah.
It just gets harder.
Yeah.
Like if you meet someone and then you have kids and then you buy a home, that's also a good time. It's always a good time to buy a home.
Yeah.
But the sooner you do it, the easier it gets, right?
Yeah. That's the reason we can function on a single income. I don't pull in $300,000 a year.
No,
and
right.
so the reason we can function is because that house was bought so long ago.
I think we should mention that as well, that your income is not like massive income.
Yeah.
It's a good income.
Yeah.
But it's not massive.
Yeah.
And you have 3 dependents right now at home.
Yeah.
And you're selling and buying a bigger home, getting into a larger amount of debt.
Yeah.
So, like, just to put that in context, because a lot of people will think, well, easy for him, he must be on lots and lots of money or have lots of cash behind it.
Yeah.
Not the case, right?
Yeah.
Like you would probably take credit for the vast majority of what you've built through blood, sweat, and tears, right?
and the pyramid scheme and the property market and leverage debt. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And all those things that help us get ahead faster. But I think a lot of people will give up before they even start.
Yeah.
And that's the sad part, because it's kind of like, oh, hey, so often we live our lives in chains without realizing we hold the keys. But it's true, right? Like, so often we don't realize just that the exit was there the entire time.
Yeah.
And we didn't take it because we believed these messages growing up or from parents,
Yeah.
from media, that we can't, that it's too hard, that it's all because of the injustices of something that you can't control.
Yeah.
But didn't affect you.
Yeah.
You just got stuck into it.
And there were compromises that were happened. Well, good English. That did happen. There were compromises that did happen, and there are compromises that still happen.
Nothing's perfect.
You know, to get that. So
yeah, nothing's perfect, but you're on your way, right?
Yeah.
Like, you got in, and now you have the option of being able to sell and buy something bigger. And you probably credit most of this to the time that you've been in the market.
Yeah.
The fact that you got in before you needed it, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, 100%.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah. I didn't have to open at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, because you could have just gone flatting and
Yeah.
saved up your money and done an amazing trip,
Yeah.
which would have cost a lot more money. But you stuck with your hard work, your savings, and you figured out a way to see the world, to scratch that itch while doing good,
Yeah.
I should add, that probably put you into this position today, or
Yeah.
was partially responsible for that. So well done.
Yeah.
All right, so as we come in for a landing, anything else you want to share with people before we go in terms of what might help them, either those that are looking to make their first move or their next move?
Yeah, and sitting down, working out kind of what you want your compromises to be. Compromises in life. In my instance, I'd say buy a house at all costs, and try to get on that. And it is worth the compromise of the fact you're not out on the town 2 days a week, and that you're not buying top shelf wine and or, and things like that. That's all worth the compromise, because flipper gets easier. Plus the side benefit of home ownership, like living in the home that you own, does give you freedom and security in that.
So get used to the compromises.
Compromises continue in life.
Compromises, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Save up, buy a house as soon as you can, and know that it gets easier.
Yeah.
Because it does, doesn't it?
That's right. Yeah, 100%. And then you make it harder again.
That's right.
It gets easier again, and then you get harder, and it gets easier, and then you die. Yeah.
That's right. Well, there's a reason why I think it's fitting that they call it gearing.
Yeah.
You're gearing.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
gearing up and
Yeah.
gearing down. You're with leverage, especially. You're
Yeah.
gearing because you can reach certain plateaus where you can hear the engine is revving higher. It's not really struggling anymore.
Yeah.
You've got potential.
We're at right now.
It is.
If we didn't buy another house.
100%. You've got more passengers in the car, but the engine's revving really hard. It's time to move into another gear, isn't it? But at some stage, you know, to really extend this metaphor, you know that you're running out of fuel, and you got to downshift, and then
That's right.
full of handbrake and go off a cliff like Thelma and Louise, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the easiness that it is now isn't gonna, like you said, it isn't gonna last very, very long.
But if it did, I guess that's the other danger, though, right? Is like, if you are at that stage where you just let it stay in gear, then you get used to it, and slowly the engine slows down until it's in that sweet spot, and you don't actually make too much progress. People pass you by.
That's right.
You're just cruising along in second
right.
gear.
That's right.
So I think,
and then those three kind of outlines, from mum and dad back in the day, kind of, more money for living, more money for giving, and more money for kind of building. Those can't grow either.
That's right.
And I mean, you need to be honest, mate, like, who doesn't want to do more of all that?
Yeah.
So as you grow your money, you have more money to grow. Therefore,
it goes even more than just the money. It's your life,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's your
That's right.
relationships
That's
and
right.
your family, especially. So you got to prepare that, because that's going to be the vessel for your wealth when you're dead and gone.
Yeah.
So like it's all like lifting when you're alive, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you're doing some heavy lifting in a good way.
Yeah.
Ideally, you're leaning into it rather than forcing it to happen. But it can happen as long as you change gears at the right time. And I think that's if I was to kind of think about the biggest takeaway for me anyway, having this conversation, is that, it just feels like when you sense that there's a time in your life where things are starting to get easier, that's where you have to take the initiative to almost create a harder environment to take that step. Because if you don't, you won't actually build anything that you're really proud of at the end of it. So, all right, last question before we go. What would you say would be like a couple of things that people could do if they are at this place in their life where they're trying to decide whether they should make another step, specifically with property, what would you recommend? Books, podcasts, exercises they can do? What would you recommend? Diet?
Yeah.
What would you recommend?
Have a chat with your wife or your husband or your partner, and get on board with the same page with them, and do it with them. Get into varied news sources. Don't get tunnel down one. Probably err away from kind of chatting to too many different people. And going into the social media and kind of like you're going to get opinions that affirm every viewpoint, and go talk to someone you're paying to see. Yeah.
Good plug. Love it. Awesome. All right. Well, I really appreciate that, Matt. And thank you to Janine for allowing you to come and talk to me today. Really appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Darcy.
Cheers.
Your jungle life, walking the tightrope, living in the then overlap with the dreams and the grinding low. Fun on one side, responsibilities on the other. I start young, but the early bird hit the swing of cover. They say what makes me wealthy might leave them broke, but I learned early that's just a game, no joke. Life's a puzzle, put the pieces together. Each step you take makes the next endeavor better. Living in the then overlap where you step up and step back. In a downward market, it's time to upgrade, that's a fact. The discount you receive bigger than the loss you lock in. When there's blood in the streets, it's time to win. Schticks might sound like a gimmick, but the story's real. Taught me to see the overlap, to strike the deal. When life gets easy, don't settle down, take that bigger step. Cause if you don't, what you pay for it later, that's debt. It's like climbing a mountain, the air gets thin, but at the top you'll find your grin. Sometimes a tougher path sooner is the key. All the lucky folks know it's not just about being free. Living in the van overlap where you step up, don't step back. In a downward market, it's time to upgrade, that's a fact. The discount you receive bigger than the loss you lock in. When there's blood in the streets, it's time to win. Why not upgrade when the market's down? You give less but take more, wear that crown. The harsh truth, the wealth I make is what puts others in the red. But hey, it's not fake. So here's to living where the circles blend, where fun meets future, around the bend. Step up when it's hard, when it's time to grow. The path less taken, that's where you'll go. In the overlap, life's a mix, not a divide. Take the tougher road with stride and pride. Cause in the end, what you'll find is that the harder path was just the right kind. Living in the van overlap where you step up, don't step back. In a downward market, it's time to upgrade, that's a fact. The discount you receive bigger than the loss you lock in. When there's blood in the streets, it's time to win. So here's to the overlap, the blend, the mix, to the life where you're both the fun and the fix. Remember Matt's story, his name might be fake, but in the then overlap there's real wealth to make. Okay.
Thanks for joining me today on the Everyday Investor Podcast. I hope you enjoyed that, and if you did, please share me around. For the odd giveaway, invite, and sneak peek, make sure that you've subscribed to the fortnightly newsletter. The link is in the show notes, as well as special referral codes from previous guests on the show. Remember, our show partners Ungaro & Co., Gorilla Technologies, and Icehouse Ventures. Lastly, a final reminder. Please remember this isn't financial advice. If you need that, reach out to me or your current financial advisor. Thanks again for joining me on this one, and we'll catch you next week.